Welcome aboard the dopamine train, where our ADHD-powered locomotive stops at every shiny thought along the tracks. I'm Obee Won, and with my co-host Rome, we explore various topics and see where the conversation train takes us.
Alrighty, we're back. So, I told...
Yeah, might need to minimize the physical activities.
But I need the physical activities. Alright, so I'm very interested in this topic. I've told Rome about this topic. It came up in one of the reels via algorithm, and I wanted to talk about it. The Cobra Effect, or also known as a perverse incentive. So when you think of Cobra Effect, what do you think of, Rome?
Well, you asked me this before we started recording, and the first thing I thought of, if we're looking at it from a political lens, is the idea of an organization or a party becoming so extreme in its opinions that it starts to eat itself. I know that's not the correct answer, but that's the first thing I thought of.
For sure. Eat itself, kind of still involved in government or in incentive in general. So a perverse incentive is an incentive meant to guide behavior when it's designed poorly, but it can encourage the exact opposite of what it was intended. For what's going to come, we're going to talk about the Cobra Effect. The origin of it is in British India. Real world disasters in war, business, and just policy in general, and maybe we can figure out how not to make those mistakes. So
right, because you and I will be implementing it in policy.
Right, because we have all of that power, right? All the power of influence on us.
Mm-hmm.
So Cobra Effect sets the scene rather in British India 1800s. Delhi had a deadly cobra problem. Too many venomous snakes throughout the city. The British government wanted to fix it, so they offered, in a sense, a bounty for every dead cobra. So, what do you think? Basically, what happened was people saw a business opportunity, and they started breeding cobras just to have them killed and collect the reward. When the British government figured this out, they canceled the bounty. The breeders now stuck with useless, non-money commodity, cobras, released them into the wild. So the end result was more cobras than before. So that's the origin of the Cobra Effect, is when the government in particular will send up an incentive to take care of a problem, like usually a lot of the time pests, now I think about it, but other problems as well. And people find a loophole to make profit off of it.
Yeah, that is, I mean, that's, to me, that seems like a really challenging thing to tackle, because there are so many smart people out there. Everyone, and I guess I should say, there are so many smart people and enough bad actors that you're going to get a combination of those two, and they're going to figure out how to game the system. It happens I think it's happened in every facet of history, in every society, every regime you can imagine. Someone out there is smart enough to take advantage of everyone else and basically flip, an arguably good idea on its head. So I actually don't know what any of the solutions would be to mitigate that.
Right. For the Cobra problem, I have no idea. It's kind of one of those things where I'm thinking of the book Freakonomics. I forget the author. The first chapter's why do sumo wrestlers and teachers cheat? So this book was written back probably early 2000s. And so there was a lot of standardized testing that was occurring. And so teachers would teach the test, or in fact, write in answers that were correct. Because if your class got good test scores, you got a bump in pay. And so the result was, because money was the incentive for your class to do well, what resulted was actual cheating. So that's what I think about as that kind of situation to the sumo wrestlers part is because at a certain like rating, if you were like in top 120 or something like that, 120 people versus below that, it was the difference of money being made. So like you would go from like making six figures to like 40 if you dropped below like that mark. And so what sumo wrestlers would do is throw games for some people just to stay in that top 150 or such. So that's another example of a perverse incentive or Cobra Effect.
So then I guess the question is, does the problem lie within the incentive itself?
When it's monetary, I think it's a problem. It just I think back to my policy class that I took in college, where you try to implement a policy. There's good policies and bad policies. There's always like you're trying to do like a 60-30-70 policy of like outcome in a sense, versus where this was a good policy and intent, like referencing back to one of our earlier podcasts of like impact versus intent, right? The intent was for cobras to be eradicated. The outcome was a black market that encouraged breeding of cobras in a sense.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I can really think of is some kind of verification that the cobra you are turning in is in fact one that was in the wild. Like if there was a way to clearly delineate.
I don't know how you do that in 1800, but
I don't either. That's the only thing I can think of as far as stamping out that particular issue, because then no one is motivated to breed them if if they're not going to get a reward for it. Because the problem is, bottom line, you need to turn in a cobra. Doesn't matter how you do it or where you get them, just as long as you do it and you get the reward. It's a very simple implementation for a solution, and it's too simple. And the problem is, the more you complicate things in order to verify their legitimacy, the more effort it takes and the longer it takes and the less effective it is. And you could make another argument that the problem is just people's general goodwill. Like if conditions are such, well, actually, no, it doesn't matter what the conditions are. All you need is greed to be introduced, and people will do anything to get ahead. So yeah, it's tough. That's a tough issue.
So I have a few more examples that are somewhat related to like the same kind of Cobra Effect. One that I found out in my research was Vietnam War and the body count incentive. And I was like, ooh, this is a little dark. So during the Vietnam War, success on the U.S. military side was measured by enemy deaths, not territory claimed, which like historically I would say it would be based off the territory gained in a sense, like controlled of a region, versus, to me that makes better sense, but they decided to go this route. And so the problem that occurred was officers would inflate numbers to make their units look good, and some even counted civilians or killed prisoners even. And so the outcome was, because of this incentive that became known, like military lost credibility and the entire war strategy was failed because they were operating on bad info in a sense. So that's what was kind of interesting to me, of it's kind of referencing back to the teacher example I gave, why teachers would cheat. If there's an incentive, because a lot of the time this would be tied to promotion sometimes as well. So if I want to get promoted, I want to get better pay in a sense, more prestige. Why wouldn't I?
Right. And part of the problem is a lot of these things to begin with, like getting an education, getting training, working hard, all of these things are intended to give you the skills and qualifications to do something well enough to then earn the reward that you're supposed to reap. But if you're getting the reward in an easier way, like if you don't actually have to expend all this energy, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just get it faster and easier? And I don't think this is necessarily even a problem of people being bad or greedy. I do think greed is the deepest root cause of it, but I think it also comes down to, humans are human, and you have a finite amount of energy, and it's like, why would I make this harder for myself? The temptation is always there to find a way around, a shortcut to make things easier. And that's not always necessarily saying it's a bad thing. You hear the phrase all the time, work smarter, not harder. So to do things that are hard for the sake of, I don't know, ego or saying that you did them that doesn't make sense necessarily. So now we're starting to toe a fine line. And then you bring in the other dynamic. Like if we're talking about money that comes from the government, well, there are some people who have the moral opinion that taking money from the government is a good thing. Like, oh, I could justify it's corrupt. There's all kinds of, there's problems with it. They don't really care about me. It is my obligation to take advantage of it because I need to look out for myself. My purpose is noble, whatever, or my purpose is worthwhile. So I'm going to do what I need to. This goes back to intent versus impact, or you could say ends justify the means.
No, definitely. It's the more examples I got into, the more I was like, for a quick profit is the thought process, for a quick turnaround. And like what you were mentioning, the long investment's usually the better one regardless, but sometimes you don't get to, you have to put yourself in this mindset of 5 years from now instead of now. And I think it's harder nowadays than ever before because we're in such an instant gratification environment. But yeah, I have another example as well. We got a bunch of them. I'll switch it back to Soviet nail factory quotas. So, as we know, Soviet was a state-run factories and production, all that good stuff. Factories were given quotas for how many nails to produce. Where do you think this went? I already know. I already know. Make nails fast, does not matter on quality. And that's exactly what they did. They made tiny, useless nails just to hit that quota. So then, government's like, okay, not how many. Weight.
Okay.
So we're going to use weight now instead of, we're trying to adjust incentive, work with them, Then, giant factories made giant, unusable nails. So you went from back in this litmus test of like, all right, this is not working, we'll do weight. But again, to hit quota, you'll do whatever it takes, especially in that kind of environment. I can only imagine. So I think like the biggest, go ahead.
This reminds me of an exercise I remember doing as a kid where the teacher played a game with us. We had to explain to her how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But we as a group would tell her how to do it, but she would follow our directions literally. So if we skipped something, then you just screw it up. Like, for example, if you have the bread and then the peanut butter is on this side and the jelly's on this side, the students would say, put the peanut butter on the bread. So she'd physically pick up the jar and put it on top of the bread. They're like, no. You need to open it and put it on the bread. So she would unscrew the lid and then put it on top of the bread again because we weren't being specific about what we needed. But this is a twofold problem. One of them is, we're coming up with these arbitrary measurements for how to meet the quota. Like if we give them these standards, then they'll make the types of nails that we need. But it's turns out that wasn't good enough. The other issue is that people in general are just really dumb. They're really unmotivated, and they're not looking at the big, like these people that are working. And I I mean, this is a whole thing. Like we're talking about the Soviet Union here, but
I was like, where are you going with this, Rome?
What I'm trying to say is, if there is no clear vision on what the bigger picture is supposed to be, people do not care. And this is not just the Soviet. This is like there's any country in the world. If people don't understand why they're doing what they're doing, they're just showing up to work. That's it. If they feel like their own quality of life is not that great, why would they care about the bigger picture? Like why would the people come together to do something well? That's a major problem, is that we generally are looking out for ourselves, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But when everyone does it, it is, because suddenly everyone's life is harder. Yeah, because no one wants to work together. Like no one wants to do the work for the sake of the job getting done in the proper way. They just want to be able to say they did it so they can collect their paycheck. It's that help me help you type deal. And of course, I'm kind of putting it in a simplistic, naive way. We're talking about a horrible regime that was, destroying people's lives. I mean, murdering its own citizens. But I, on a very basic level, if you and I want to achieve something, we need to see eye to eye, and we need to be willing to go the extra mile for each other so that both of our lives are better. Not because I'm going to get something out of it and maybe you'll get something out of it, but I need to get more out of it. This is for the greater good. The greater good is for both of us.
Yeah, you touched on a lot. I think I'm definitely in the camp of, we kind of threw out the institutions that had us taught that, in a sense. Like, people harbor on religion, yes. But also what happens in the community base. And I'm not saying that it doesn't happen at home. It depends on how purposeful you are raising your kids. That's at the end of the day key. But kind of with religion, I feel like there is a catch-all to be like a good person, have that morality, like, oh, we need to do it for the good of the team. And yes, you can learn that like in sports and that, but there's not like an institution or a like mission statement like what you're saying to aspire to. Like, what is our mission? To do the greatest podcast ever? Maybe not, who knows. But that, I don't know where I was going.
It's funny.
With that,
well, it's funny you say that, because that's something that it seems really simple, but probably should be clearly delineated. I guess I think of our mission statement, considering it's called Dopamine Train, it's an opportunity for two people to show up and consistently try to do good work every week. I mean, even if the end result isn't that great, like someone could be falling asleep listening to this, as long as we are getting better each and every time. See, that's pretty bad if the podcaster is falling asleep.
No, I'm just kidding.
As long as we are showing up and we're patient, it will get better. There's something else I was going to say, but
and then I distracted you with my distraction.
It's okay. No, it's okay.
I'm a master distractor.
Yeah.
So, I think I want to share another example. We'll bring it back to the U.S. One of my favorite scandals in...
My favorite scandal.
My favorite scandal. How scandalous. Let's add another dad joke. It's a Ford. I don't know. So the Ford Pinto scandal. I know some folk out there might already know this. Some folk may not. We're going to meet in the middle. So what would you put on a price on a human life, Alex?
Well, that's a loaded question.
Very loaded.
Is there any like context here? What are we talking about?
We straight answer, gut, right from the gut, straight from
the
head.
Like a monetary price?
Monetary price. Just curious.
I'm just gonna say priceless because I don't know what in what
Fair
context
enough.
we're talking about here.
So so this is the Ford Pinto scandal of the 1970s. Ford discovered a deadly flaw in the Pinto's gas tank. So what would happen is if you got rear-ended, kaboom,
Oh, the whole thing would explode.
and you would die
Yeah.
because best of luck, friend. Um, instead of fixing it, $11 per car, they calculated the cost of lawsuits. So the outcome was hundreds of people died in cars. They ended up getting massive lawsuits. The PR disaster, because then some of the engineers came forward and were like, we let them know, do not put us underneath the bus. And then the good thing is overall new safety regulations, but it's sad that people had to die.
What year was this?
The 1970s. I'm not sure on the exact year.
Nothing.
Whenever the Ford Pinto came out, I don't know.
That people like to make the present seem so much worse than like things were so much better in the 90s or 80s or 70s. And then I hear stuff like that. I'm like, weren't all that different. I mean, things were way worse many, many, many years ago. But in modernity, it's like people were just as
the fact that we're able to do this, and like some people, I've heard arguments from friends. They're like, I would just love to go back and be in a surf where you're only worrying about just the daily survival thing. I'm like,
I mean, you could technically do that now if you want.
No, thank you. Maybe once I've learned those skills, but don't put me out to. We're an indoor cat, not an outdoor cat.
Yeah.
Like we can cook, we can do the thing, but the growing of the food, like I've kept one plant alive for at least 5 years now. Wow, it's a 5-year plant because I got it during the pandemic.
When people say things like that, those are not thought out statements. That is just like I would like at this very moment to complain and make my complaint as creative as possible.
It's like I think we watched the other day this video on Xbox 360 or Xbox Live 360 like insults or chats that were back then.
Mm-hmm.
I think we watched it together, and some of the stuff I'm just like, whoa, the creativity first off, I'll give it that, and after that it was like, what in the hell kind of nonsense was going on in your brain when you decided to speak or write that?
Yeah,
I think my favorite insult was your I'm trying to put it in nicer terms, but we're on a parental advisory, so I'll just say it. Your dick is the size of a maggot's eyelash.
very poetic.
Very poetic. Like, I didn't think maggots had eyelashes.
I don't think they do.
That's what I was thinking about. But I can tell.
I mean, those
I've
qualities
exhausted
are mutually exclusive. You can be a jackass and still say creative things.
Right, definitely. Okay, so back to the task at hand. So we talked about the Pinto, we talked about nails, we talked about cobras, we talked about the Vietnam War. Let's go to banking.
To what?
To banking.
Banking.
Money.
Okay.
Money. Yay. So, Wells Fargo fake account scandal. I do not have the year for that. But Wells Fargo forced employees to meet aggressive quotas, meaning to get new customers. And with quota, it sounds like you set a quota that's not realistic, set up to fail, it sounds like. So employees started making fake bank accounts to hit their numbers. And it I think my privacy and security brand's going like, we are adding more fraudulent possibilities that could occur. Because some employees sold that stuff on the dark web. So the outcome was 3.5 million fake accounts, and would result. And so, like, basically, I'm assuming what occurred as well is investors saw it was inflated business in a sense, false inflation, or false inflation, an inflated amount of customer base. So it led to huge lawsuits and billions in fines. And so basically, I would say, like, when you push people too hard or push them to a quota that's not realistic, people will find a way, but not the right way, in a sense. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, Alex.
Again, it goes both ways. If you're pushing your employees to meet unrealistic quotas, and your employees don't, like, they obviously don't believe, like, they don't feel like the company actually cares about them, then why would they care about meeting this in a substantial way? It's like, man, this is such a deep rooted issue of, like, who is the person who decides I'm in the wrong and I'm going to try to set things right at the expense of my own ego so that everything is better for everyone,
You're asking good questions, my dude.
Preaching to the choir.
That's what I was, and this is, I think, the wild thing. And since we were live recording with everything, I'll say this out loud and for the masses to hear. If I had money, hundreds of millions of dollars, I would give it all away, or find a way to give it all away, in a sense, because I don't need it. And I think I watched this one reel. It was kind of very interesting to me. There's this gentleman out in California, I know, big state, in a very rural area where it's like cell signal non-existent, gas has to be driven in, this and that. And he started buying up the land. So he bought all of this land, and then people, if they were willing to live there up full time, he's willing to sell them the land for no interest loan, in a sense, and they would just pay them, and as long as they lived there up full time. And so when people started then buying, like, vacation homes, he would buy that property up so that it would not lead to this gentrification, or these one-time use not one-time use houses, but like 2-month use house, in a sense. And I think about that a lot, of what kind of steward of this money do I want to be? We hear about this in, like, Christianity, and you have these Christians with millions of dollars, and it's like, what are we doing, friends? Why do we need all this money? What is it tied to when we could solve things? But that's just my thoughts. I know we went a little bit off track.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that isn't necessarily, that's the most obvious solution up front, but there's no indication. I just think of, like, people who win the lottery, right? Just imagine for a second that, you have basically nothing, and then suddenly you come across all this cash, in the same way that, you would be charitable and you'd give it to people in need. First off, there are so many people that they just chronically make bad decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if them receiving the money is going to pull them out, or it's going to enable them to make even worse decisions.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I feel like had I been in that same scenario that you're describing, I would have to find a strategic way to use it. Like, either create or produce using it in a way that employs people that want to work, or give it to charitable organizations that I know are actually going to, they know how to bookkeep and can manage the funds properly, because there is this idea that we have enough wealth to solve virtually every problem there is. But I think it's more nuanced than that. I think it depends on where the money goes specifically and how it's allocated. Because I could be like, if I were the richest man on earth and I gave every last penny to one charitable organization, that money is not going to the people that it's supposed to. It's getting
100%.
taken along the way by bad actors. So you almost have to do some hard, serious work and research to make sure that your investment is going where you want it to, that it's actually having the impact you want. And you kind of have to see firsthand, oversee it firsthand in order to make it happen.
Exactly.
So I think it's a multifaceted problem, and you really have to kind of oversee your own investment to know that it's going to the places that you actually want it to. So it actually has a tangible effect. It's not just about people pretending to do their job or saying there are these numbers on a sheet, or that like we're just missing the point here. It's like we need to do stuff in order for like the actions, the completion of those tasks are what make life better. It's not saying you did them, it's doing them and them serving their purpose.
The follow through is what you're getting at.
Yeah, and just understanding that it's, you don't show up to work for a paycheck. You go to work to do a good job. And the reason why people don't go to work to do a good job is because they're not being compensated properly for it. And most of the time, the people in the higher up positions don't know why they're there either. They just want to get a paycheck too. They don't care if it actually serves the greater good. Some of them do. I'm not going to, blanket statement this. There are people out there that understand this concept that I'm talking about of, actions have consequences. And if you do something for the betterment of everyone, then everyone is going to, you then encourage other people to act in a similar way. The problem is right now we're so hyper individualistic that, gosh, I sound so radicalized. Nothing I'm saying, it's crazy because nothing I'm saying is that outrageous, but just listening to myself talk, I'm like, some people would hear this and be like, oh man, that's like super left-wing stuff.
It's not even, well, it's people. I think there's some people that do things out of the kindness of their hearts, and I've met those individuals, and I've really genuinely surrounded myself with those individuals. And then the ones that don't, I keep on a
arm's length
in a sense. Close, but not like, I just need to know what's going to happen in a sense. But I think it really comes down to holding, it's a battle of ethics in a sense of like what is ethical behavior.
Yeah. And that's tough because ethics are kind of subjective. Different cultures, different societies have vastly different values as to what is considered ethical or not ethical. And in their own unique circumstances, those sets of ideas are just as effective as the others in a different society.
Well, I think there's universal truths, right? Is murder is wrong. Self-defense is allowed. And that's the only time like murder is in a sense allowed is self-defense. And that's why you have every argument ever for starting a war is we have to save, help, do something for it. And that's referenced in like in the modern era, especially you can think of like Adolf Hitler's reason for invading different parts of Europe was like Germanic speaking peoples. That's like one thing to protect them and such.
I was going to say, I don't know if they would have agreed with your universal truth that murder is wrong.
Well, it brings up the concept of murder. You go down a route of like, it is a heightening of or escalation of policy or like distaste. So if you're looking at, we're using that example. I don't like using Nazi Germany as an example sometimes because there's like, it's just known bad. It's like a known don't do.
Yeah, but
bad.
they didn't think they were bad. The people who were part of the regime, I am sure that they truly believed that they were on the path of righteousness. Just like, I mean, we talk about any terrorist group in the last century.
Right.
They all believed they were the good guys.
Oh yeah, I'm not denying that at all. What I would say is they're murdering them. So I would say this: murdering another terrorist that is on your team is bad. Correct? That's a universal truth.
So someone
unless there's a justification of like whatever reason, but I'm just saying in generals, because we can get down into the specifics, but I'm saying in generals, bad, don't do. You can always come, because that's the glory of humanity, is we always find a loophole no matter what the regulation is. And that's a perfect case of all of the Cobra Effect we've been talking about, is I found a loophole, I'm going to exploit it. I found a loophole, I'm going to exploit it. And I could go down the whole list. So if we want to use Germany as an example of like murdering, committing the Holocaust, the reason why they did that is because of racism, bigotry that was deeply rooted in Christian identity, and also just the product of the times, in a sense, stemming from the early 1800s, where everyone was anti-Semitic in a sense.
Actually, a good question I want to ask to clarify is, what is a universal truth?
So universal truth to me is something that everyone can agree upon that is like correct or wrong, right? Helping others is a good thing, and that's a universal truth to me. I can look one up if you want me to look up the exact definition.
A universal truth is the idea that everyone agrees on this rule, and an example would be helping others. So do you think that every society believes that helping others is the right thing?
In general, yes. I see your face, you're like, but there's this one specific. I'm saying in general. Because you get into the specifics, that's when you can't, there's always outliers. Always.
So that means it's not universal.
Dude, it's a bell curve.
Oh, okay. So I guess I should specify.
I'm in the middle of the bell curve. You are saying something that is
universal does not mean everyone.
Correct, but
that's a good distinction. I needed to know.
Because, well, according to the internet, a universal truth or universal truths are fundamental principles or ideas that apply across different cultures, societies, or time periods. So if I go to another country and I murder someone, bad. If someone comes to this country and murders someone, bad. If I go into no matter what, murder, bad. And that's what my argument is. Yes, you can have the justifications for doing that bad act to make it in your brain right, and that's where there's this distinction of nobody really does wrong always right because of the justification in their brain. That's what I think you're getting at more, but what I'm just talking about is like, in general, bad thing, don't do.
How do you think those come to be? Like, how do different independent societies come to agree on the same notions of morality in the way that you're describing?
because there's difference in the sameness. Because you can still be different and still find a commonality.
Well, that's what I'm asking. It's like where does the commonality come from if it
we're all
happens
human
independently?
beings. Well, we're all human beings.
Yeah,
So
I guess it's just a nature thing.
I think it would be a nature thing. It's in nature. It's better to be collaborative in certain aspects, and that's like for a lot of species of animals and plants is the key to survival.
That's true. That is true. I think of what's that? There's an animal that is it the rhinos where they let the birds, or it might be elephants, they let the birds land on them to help. I don't know if it's
eat the parasites.
Eat the parasites. Okay, yeah, it's cooperation.
Sharks have that too with another fish. Like cleaner fish is a big one, right? They'll let them go up in their mouth, do some dental cleaning, and let them move out. You know, things like that. And then there's also bad ones too, where I forget what parasite it is. It eats out a fish's tongue and then becomes the tongue for the fish. Yeah, it's real gross. If you want to be freaked out, like there you go. And so like the fish, if gets rid of it's like basically screwed because it can't swallow unless it has this parasite there. Yeah, whole thing. But anyway, so to the universal truth stuff and to I think it's in human nature to cooperate and collaborate because it's in our best interest to do so, like you mentioned earlier in the podcast. It's just when you go beyond that scope, when you go beyond just helping out of like, maybe I need more. And sometimes you can make the argument, right? Is greed a nature, right? But is human nature to be greedy? And if you look in like nature, right? Or any sort of animal, like from squirrels, right? Squirrels get more nuts than they need, but the positive aspect of that is more trees grow because they lose track of those nuts.
Yeah. I wonder if that's greed though, or if that's just they're not, organized, or they probably overestimate how much they need because they're going to lose some.
I'm thinking of domestic animals, of like a cat or a dog, and you just leave out a ton of food. They're going to go through that
they're
food.
They're going to go through all the food.
They're going to go through that food. So is that greed or just...
Yeah, I mean, we think it's true. When the cat was eating the food, I was like, that's a greedy cat right there.
So there you go. So I think to bring it back to all of it is people will act when it's in their best interest to do the right thing, which I think it should be always, but there's always like the temptation to want more than you need.
I also think people need to be very conscientious of the fact that it is easy to be kind and generous when your life is going well, but as soon as your circumstances or your livelihood are threatened, people will turn pretty quick. Like normal, decent people will revert back to their ways in order to stay ahead, stay comfortable at the expense of others. And it's a slippery slope because it's great when we live in good times, when we don't, I can wake up today and I don't have to think about explosions going off in my neighborhood. Like that is, we forget just how lucky we are to not have to deal with that. And that's the key thing. Unfortunately, we forget. And as we forget, we lose that resolve, and then we start to slowly drift towards the circumstances that could bring those hard times back. And of course, the hard times create strong people, difficult experiences create strong people, and then they get us out of it again, and the cycle continues.
Right. I feel like I've seen so much I don't know. The only word I can think of is propaganda, but that's what immediately, not to say that your thoughts are propaganda, but it was like, oh, the hard times, the good. Like, I see it sometimes pop up on memes a lot of the time, and I'm just like, true, but I don't know if I want to go to the hard times. Like, in what, to like kind of play the devil's advocate, what are the hard times? Because living is just hard, in my opinion. Yes, there's
Well, yeah,
different ways
that
to
is
do it.
you could get into a whole subjective discuss. I guess comparatively speaking, and it's going to be different for everyone, that having access to medical technology that allows us to comfortably live past the age of 30, which was, I mean, back when um, back when people were back when the colonies existed in the East Coast and the New World, you were lucky if you lived past, I think it was 25, maybe. And you were living a long life, and that just it's crazy to think that 5 years ago we would have been goners. We'd be done. I feel like I've barely lived in some ways. But yeah, I think my point being, comparatively speaking, there are a lot of amenities that allow you to live a fairly decent life. And that is preferable to prior circumstances. And you don't have to, I mean, there's still crime, obviously. Like you do have to be careful when you go out into the world. Like, there is always a risk. There's accidents. There's all kinds of things like that. But life is hard, but there are more obvious options to assist you through its difficulty now than there ever have been before. Like YouTube. There's a whole video we had talking about YouTube and all the educational things. Like, you could teach yourself so many things to make your own life easier. Like, the resources are out there.
Are you utilizing them though? No.
No. Most people don't utilize them, and why?
Myself.
It's kind of a paradox, actually. The reason most people don't utilize them is because they don't feel like they need to, or they're not motivated to. Right? I don't have to go out and figure out how I'm going to get my food. If YouTube existed during caveman times, as you know, that nonsensical as that sounds, everybody would be watching videos on how to make their tools, how to make their weapons so that they could survive. But you don't have to do that. You can just go to Wendy's and order something. You don't have to watch YouTube to know how to do that. So I
don't even know how to make a burger. Does it come from Macau?
Right. It takes a certain level of drive, I think, in order to want to keep that part of the brain going of I want to stay sharp. I want to get more so that I can improve and ultimately be more flexible, right? Like, be able to navigate the world now, because as nice as I'm making it seem, it is way more complicated now. In some ways it is so much harder, and the difficulties are more abstract, and the mental health challenges that we deal with now as a result of not being totally preoccupied with the things we used to be that were really, I mean, they were dangerous and they were scary, but they were simple and they were tangible. Now our problems are so like complicated and ephemeral, and it's like having meaning in your life and having purpose, because all of the basic necessities, and again, this doesn't apply to everyone, because there are people who are in really difficult spots who are just barely trying to make ends meet. They can't worry about this stuff. They're just trying to get their meal for the next day. But for the large number of people who are living in wealth, these are the types of problems they deal with. It's like, I'm not motivated to figure anything out because I kind of don't need to. So then no one explains that to you. Yeah. No one explains that to you. So you wonder what's wrong. And it's vicious, man. And it comes with a combination of how much do you think about things, and are you presented with enough good fortune to be exposed to ideas that make you go, oh, maybe this is actually important, and I should continue to cultivate this part of my being in order to stay of sound mind in a time where things are becoming more convoluted. It's a lot of word salad. I apologize.
No, you're good. Word salad. Word salad. Yummy, yummy. No, it's all good points, all good things. I think that's like our theme for a lot of our podcasts and episodes is like how to stay motivated and referencing the good times are now, even though we might be hitting some rough inflation and things of that sort, but generally we have our necessities taken care of and all that good stuff. I think we talk about that every time, but it's also good things that we talk about.
I mean, just think about those two ideas next to each other. Inflation versus invasion. Like, those both suck, but imagine, I'm in my 30s. I live at home. It's not my ideal situation. It's not what I thought. It's not where I thought I'd be at when I was a kid. But think about that versus being a teenager in 1939 France, right before the Germans entered. Like, there's no way you could convince me that circumstance was preferable.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. Exactly. I have a few more examples if we want to go through them. It's up to you.
Sure.
They're kind of interesting. One of them, I'll let you choose Vietnam or Mexico.
Mexico
City's pollution policy. So Mexico decided to ban cars on certain days based on license plates. So meaning you couldn't drive those cars that day via license plate. Basically trying to cut down on pollution. What occurred was people still needed to go to work. They didn't just walk. So they bought a second car. Which was often older and polluted even more. And so pollution got worse instead of better. So they eventually scrapped the whole policy, called it a day. I think the intent was, like it was definitely, to me, how I've read this example was, here are the numbers. What if we just like one day these cars drive, one day these cars drive, not think of it like that was to me a very in a vacuum solution. Not thinking about, people got to go to work. How are we going to do that in a sense, So I found it very interesting. Like that was like the most like, yeah, that what you think was going to happen versus the other ones. I'm like, I kind of could see it. It's based off like parameters and such, or just straight up greed. Like that's the Ford Pinto for me. The other one for Vietnam is the rat problem in French Vietnam. So, 1902, there's been a problem with the rats. So, they put out bounties for rats. Rat tails specifically. You already know what's going on. People cut off the tails of rats, but left them alive this time instead of just fully killing them. And then they kept breeding. So, result, more rats came on the scene and it exploded. So, same mistake, different ambulance. So, because of history, the Cobra happened first, then the rat. And so that's why it's called the Cobra Effect, not the rat effect. But it kind of reminds me of situations where you see this environmental stuff a lot of time, like countries will import a certain predator to take care of a population, and then it has an adverse effect to the environment. I can't think of one on top of my head. I don't know if you have one on mind at all. I'm blanking.
No,
but I know it's like exists. Like, I think they thought about, for New York, they thought about reintroducing wolves, but I think instead they've just encouraged more deer hunting.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of what else. But those are all the examples I have. But what I think the big thing is, why do you think? Oh, go ahead.
Can you think of this same concept we're talking about on a personal level? Like how this applies to not a nation making a decision, but you or I making a decision that ultimately backfires?
I feel like the backfiring, like what does
Where like you say, okay, I'm going to do this in order to mitigate this. And as a result, you start doing the thing you were avoiding more.
I can't think of one of them at the moment, but because I feel like in my brain it's like a regret thing, because you would have to regret it. But then I live my life with no regrets.
Really?
Yeah. Like, I regret in the moment, but I think that's where I really am fortunate that I chose a sport like volleyball, because you can't dwell on the past. Like, you learn from, like, okay, I could have done better, and then it's like within seconds you have to switch, like a switch. And for volleyball, that's literally the practice I had to do, and I did that most of my like childhood. Actually, not most of my child, I was like, a good majority of my childhood was like every day played volleyball and would have that same thing. Because if you think about the mistake you make and dwell on it, then it costs you 2 instead of 1.
That is a very good point.
So I might have had one, but because of how my brain is wired and conditioned, that I just don't. It happened. It is what it is.
I guess I look at regret differently. I think of regret as, I made a mistake. Now I should never forget it so that I don't do it again.
True.
That's how I improve, or try to improve.
Right. I guess I just make the same mistake multiple times and I just don't care. That's like my only, like, I'm like, the only logic there is like, maybe we're just messing up every time and just like saying, next time.
Yeah. And you could almost argue,
is what it is, how it is.
Are you really messing up if you don't care? I mean, maybe you're winning.
Winning at life.
Yeah. Maybe the fact that it doesn't bother you is the ultimate. Who cares?
It's because my resiliency skill is so high.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we're reaching that mark. I just want to like make sure we wrap up everything that we've said today.
The only example I can think of, because I just thought of one.
Okay.
Is
real quick.
When, gosh, I sound like a broken record. When I try, so let's say I stay up really late. Like, I'm staying up really late because I just don't feel like I want to, chat on the phone. I want to play some games. I just want to do, it's a weekend. I want to do whatever I want.
Just chill, bro.
And so I stay up late. I wake up kind of late. And that's a problem the next day. Like, that's a real problem. Everything gets pushed back. So I tell myself, okay, now you're going to wake up early, and you're going to mitigate this. So for a certain period of time, I wake up early. Everything goes well. There are more hours in the day to do things. And then I start actually getting less sleep, because I'm now funneled into this narrow between like 9:30 and 5 a.m. I have to do that. And then I'm getting more tired as the days go on. And suddenly I'm actually like I guess it's not that great of an example because it's not worse than it was before, but I'm kind of back in the same predicament. It's just shifted to a different part of the day, if that makes sense.
Right. I get what you're saying. I think it's when you stay so regimented for so long, and then you have a hiccup, and it's the question of, and this is the resiliency part, and we'll bring it back to volleyball. Is like, am I going to let that one mistake ruin the next freaking day?
Right. The answer is yes. It's all over.
Sometimes it's yes, and sometimes and that's why I applaud, and I think that's where I would make the argument sometimes. I think we brought it up in another podcast or our own discussion. Like sometimes depression is addictive, or we're just it's habitual, and so we get in that habit.
Yeah, you're touching on it. That's like a whole other episode we can talk about.
Yeah, habitual in a sense, but yeah, I think all good stuff. I just want to make sure we have enough time.
It's I think something worth discussing in the future is the idea that I feel horrible, but I'm being taken care of, and the cost of feeling bad is outweighed by the feeling of being taken care of, where the inverse would be if I were healthy and I were able, that means I would have to be responsible. If I can do all the things, if I'm capable of doing all the things I need to do, that means I have to do them. And for some people, they would rather feel inept and be taken care of than feel able and then actually have to do the thing. This is like, that is such a...
Sounds like that's the next topic on the podcast.
Yeah, something we'll definitely have to cover.
No. Next time on Dopamine Train, talking about that. This time on Dopamine Train, we talked about perverse incentives, the Cobra Effect, different things. We talked about how it related to our personal lives and future podcasts even. And we're even referencing back to our original source material. So basically in the end, short-term thinking leads to quick fixes that may lead to bad long-term problems. I think sometimes it's important to find good people that will give you feedback on a thing. I think if some people, for like the Soviet case, was like, are we making this decision in a vacuum? Same with like the Mexico case with pollution. Are we making this decision in a vacuum? What are the other effects that are occurring? And then also it's in human nature to game the system. People always find a loophole. Mm-hmm. That's what makes, I think, humanity great, and also
innovative in a way.
Innovative, and also our worst things as well, is that we always find a way to make it better. And that's where, like, yes, we're ending sometimes in the bad direction, but I genuinely believe in humanity will always find a solution to the problem. And I think that's also my argument is, why not start sooner? why procrastinate until it's like,
well, because it's hard.
Oh, it's happening.
Yeah.
The fire is burning. The building's falling down. Maybe we should use concrete instead of wood.
Because none of that is real in people's minds until it happens. The idea of it's one of the ideas with like securing your house, right? You if you get a security system, you get lights, whatever. If you never get broken into, it seems like it's not doing anything. Yeah. It's like, why do I have this? But then as soon as you do get broken into, you wish you had it. If you didn't already, or you do, and it hopefully mitigates the problem, and then suddenly it serves its purpose. But you don't want that to ever have to happen. The problem with safety is that it is putting in effort in case of something, not because of something. And so I think a lot of companies would just rather, well, we'll see the consequences. And we'll make adjustments afterwards, even if it costs people a lot. Yeah.
Exactly. So until next time, friends, audience of us, the Dopamine Train, we'll talk soon.
Talk soon. Thanks for listening.